Hi, everybody. I'm going to apologise up front because my accent is very, very thick. But yeah, as you can tell, I'm not really from around here. Firstly, I want to thank Josh and all you guys for coming out, and thank Josh for actually the experience of speaking at Hay. It's one of the events that I've always wanted to speak at. So the community around Leeds is a lot stronger than what it is in Newcastle, Sunderland area. So it's a really big honour for me to actually be able to speak here. So I really, really appreciate it. So maybe about 2 weeks ago, I reached out to Josh and I was like, if you've got an opportunity in the future to speak, I would love to. And he was like, yeah, so we've got like an opportunity now. And I originally turned it down, and it was like, I don't really have the time to think about an idea. But then went back and thought, actually, this is going to be an interesting challenge. So I threw this title at him of engineering yourself, which is actually a little bit misleading because it sounds very much like it's going to be based on being a better engineer, or it's based on human anatomy, which human anatomy I know nothing about. But I do know a little bit about being a good engineer, hopefully. But with regards to being a great engineer, I'm not really focusing specifically on the skills that's required to be a great engineer. I'm focusing on the qualities and mantras which I feel make a great employee, really. So this may relate to the engineers in the room and up-and-coming engineers who are people who want to be an engineer, but all of these things apply to everybody who really cares about their work. So I want to start with a question, which is, why did you choose your career? Or why are you choosing the career you're going into if you're a student? Maybe it relates to you. It's like flows from your education. So you had a degree which relates to the job that you're in now. It's absolutely fine. But why did you choose to take that degree? So think about that. Or was it just an accident? What you'll find out about me is that this was definitely an accident. I didn't choose this career at all. Or is it something that you're good at? A lot of engineers are very good programmers, but they were good programmers before they became an engineer, so they just fell into it because they were very good at being an engineer. The reason I say this is because 80% of people don't enjoy their work, which it's sort of understandable, but 80% is a huge number, and it feels massive. So it seems like, why are we sort of choosing careers that we don't enjoy? So yeah, as Josh said, I'm Ben. I'm not from around here at all. I did live here for a few months previously when I worked for Sky, but I don't work for Sky anymore, so unlike all the other speakers and everybody else in this room, I'm not part of Sky anymore. So I now work for a company, an ad tech company, who are based in Middlesbrough called Clickscore, and I'm a senior front-end developer. I previously worked with clients such as Vim, BlackBerry, and also News Corporation when I worked for The Sun. And as you can see there's a Twitter handle, which is Strikethrough. That's because I've never had Twitter. That's probably what it would look like if I did have Twitter. But unfortunately, if you have any questions, you unfortunately don't have to talk to us. It's weird in this environment, but yeah, we don't have to talk. So I'll be around a little bit after, but I have to head back tonight, so I'll be around for only a little while. So as I said, I fell into this by an accident, and I do sort of want to tell you why I became an engineer. So obviously, as I said, I didn't originally plan to do this. It was something I fell into, and weirdly, I actually didn't want to do anything related to digital at all. When I left school, my dream was to be a marine biologist. Sounds crazy, but that was my passion. I aspired to do that because I loved, weirdly, I loved whales. It was weird, but yeah, that was my dream. Unfortunately, I sort of didn't follow through with that, and I ended up going to college and then dropping out and applying for an apprenticeship as a business administration assistant. So this is 2009. Get calls through saying, like, we've got apprenticeships, but it's for a web developer. And I was like, okay, what's a web developer? This is 2009. I literally, before that point, only touched the computer to do my studies at school. I didn't really know anything about it. I'm not your average programmer. I didn't come from a background of throwing things into and then press it. It's like it wasn't me. So yeah. So I ended up doing an apprenticeship for maybe 2 years as a web developer, which didn't really do anything for me because it wasn't being a web developer. It was making tea and coffee and doing things as maybe just an assistant. I did pick up things along the way, but the problem was I lacked interest. Lacked an understanding for the things that I was working in, and I didn't have any interest because the culture that I was working in it wasn't great. I wasn't being brought on because the people around me weren't helping me. Now, when you look at this interface, if we go back, when I originally came on, I looked at the interface like this, and my first thought was it was intimidation, confusion. To some people who are programmers, maybe it's joy, you feel at home, but to a lot of people it's intimidation and confusion. The thing is, though, this is what puts a lot of people off engineering, a role in engineering, because you feel like you don't have the logical, algorithmic mind to be able to do things like this. But unfortunately, what you don't realize is that learning the program is actually not intellectual, it's emotional. So you're just telling yourself that you can't do this, but you don't have a good enough understanding of what this actually consists of. You just see what's in front of you, something that you don't understand. But like all core skills in a job, all things can be taught. So programming can be taught, and that's why I think that programming is not the core skill to being a great engineer. Now, I use this Roots Before Branches because it's actually the name of a song, but it's actually a great analogy for what I'm trying to put forward. A lot of people who do come into programming, and this is probably the one slide that actually relates to programming specifically. A lot of people who do come into programming and want to be a great engineer, they usually flood themselves under with multiple syntaxes, multiple languages, and just try to get a good understanding of a wider, broader scale, and lack very much focus. But really, you need focus, and what I'm saying about focus here is in terms of design patterns, methodologies, and actually focusing on those things. Take, for example, any programmers in the room or any developers, the current situation with JavaScript. We're in a state where it is known as JavaScript fatigue. And it's difficult to keep up because we have libraries coming out on a daily basis, and we seem to jump on top of things very quickly. Just not just because it actually is useful for us to evaluate things, but also we see things that are in our timeline and get driven. We become a sheep. We don't really make our own decisions anymore. And we actually seem to get drawn into things because other people are saying it's a cool thing to do. The problem is we don't really focus on our core skills. So if you understood things like functional and reactive, you would realize that you don't really need to put a lot of time into things like Redux because you have a good understanding of the initial under architecture. You don't really need to focus on 4 methods. It gets so much hype, even though it's 4 methods. we really should just focus on our core skills as an engineer. So this is actually plays into the hands of people who come from an educational background. A lot of people who come from an educational background and have a computer science degree, you usually learn a lot of things about design patterns and a lot of things about methodologies, about functional programming, about reactive programming. And maybe that only relates to maybe one or two languages that you relate to. But we've shown, people like Harry Roberts has shown that we can use design patterns in CSS. We can use them in languages that are so low level. So it applies to everything, and it's just a case of how you use those design patterns and how you interpret them. But as I say, I don't really relate programming to being the core skill to be a great engineer. I relate qualities and mantras because, as I say, I didn't come from a programming background. All I have is certain qualities which I think is worked well for me, and as you see when we go through the story of where I've got to, it's been based on the qualities that I have. So passion, it's another one. It's another quote that I absolutely love, and it's from a TV show, and it's without passion you can't succeed. When I was younger, I come from a background where my family are very labour, like they work in jobs which are very labour oriented, and you look at me and I'm just a skinny little person. I can't lift a brick or lay a brick or anything like that. It was never going to happen for me. So I looked elsewhere for other opportunities as a career. But the thing is, though, my family are they're very determined to do well in whatever field, even though they lack certain qualities or they're not very intellectual, but they are very determined to do well. So when I was younger, I was told that I need to get this the right way around. Live to work to live. I was told to live to work, not work to live. I think that's the right way around. But it's basically to focus on just getting a paycheck, basically. And it was weird to me because this was knocked into me very often from my granddad, my mother, constantly from a young age. So I was always told to really just focus on getting a good paycheck. But the problem is that it was not in me to do that. I was never going to focus on the money. I was always going to focus on trying to be a good employee in whatever role I took. So I always focused on trying to be passionate about whatever I was going to do. And also, you've got to think that we spend 37% of our lives on average in the workplace. Why do I want to spend 37% of my life in somewhere that I don't really care about, working with a team that I don't really care about, in a culture that is terrible? I was always going to look for opportunities where I could express myself and work in a team that was full of mentors, which could boost my chances of being a better employee. So it was always about passion to me. But if I'm going to be controversial, I think that this quality is actually the main thing to being a good engineer. And it's not just about being a good engineer, but I think it's about being a good employee in any role. So grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Being a great engineer is about having stamina. It's about thinking about the role as a marathon and not a sprint. You have to have very good stamina. And it's sticking with your future day in, day out. And not for just a week, not for just a month, not for the year, but for your full career to make that future reality. And this is why I think grit's so important. Studies on grit have been done around the world, specifically in the US. And what they found is that the more intellectual you were, the less gritty you were. It's weird, but more intellectual people are not going to. It seemed like they wouldn't follow through on their goals as much. So they found that people who were very gritty followed through on their goals and actually were more orientated to actually producing a good result at the end. So they'd done this in schools at primary level. It was based on IQ specifically, but then they also done it in the Navy. And they worked out that people who were less intellectual were more grittier and ended up finishing their course compared to people who were actually intellectual. So, yeah. So I do think grit is the main proponent to being a good engineer. And it's a thing that I have the most of because really, programming is difficult, don't get us wrong. And when you come from a background where you don't have that logical, algorithmic head, you're not very good with maths, you're not very good with science, you find this intimidating as hell. So all that you can do is put in a lot of work and be determined to be as good as the people you aspire to be. Now this is very cliche, but we also usually see the cliche in terms of failure's never an option. But failure is always an option. Failure is just the progress towards success. That's all failure is. When you fail, if you learn from it, you constantly strive towards the actual the success of what you're trying to achieve. It's just learning from it. If you fail and you're constantly not learning from what you're failing from, you're going to constantly go on and fail. But if you're learning from it, you're going to eventually get to that end goal. So understand that failure is definitely always an option. This relates quite closely to grit, actually, because failure promotes this thing known as a growth mindset. And it's understanding that failure is not a permanent condition. So once you understand that failure is not a permanent condition, you actually get more gritty. It actually treated as more gritty. You can't teach grit. You can't teach passion. You can just embrace it. That's all you can do. This one, so you're never done learning. This is not specific to all trades, but it's definitely specific to being an engineer. And as I said, in JavaScript, it constantly changes, and you're never done learning. One thing that you need to focus on is really, you don't want to be arrogant in your skill set. You need to understand that no matter how good you are, you can always learn, and you need to listen. So when you speak, you're just saying things you already know, but when you listen, you actually might learn something. So it's understanding that you need to be a communicator, a good listener, and you need to know that you're never finished with what you're learning. You need to strive to be the best engineer you can be, and it's not focusing on being a good engineer, it's focusing on being a great engineer. We're not here to be good engineers. We are not here tonight. People are not here to be good at their jobs. We don't come out and spend our personal time at community events to be good at something. We want to be great in our roles, and we want to be great in our industry. Now, this is one that it's difficult because when you're first out of college or university, when I say choose your job, you might think, well, it's not as easy to just choose my job. But it's not about actually choosing the role you go into, but actually evaluating the job that you go into. So focusing on a small digital agency that knocks out sites and you're a single developer, is that really good for you? But shouldn't you be focusing on having great mentors? You're new to this. You want to be around people who you aspire to be. So it's focusing on focusing on getting into a role that is actually suited to you becoming a great engineer. And having the right reasons to go into a job. Don't go into a job for money. I know. I can't just say that to you and say, "Oh, you don't go into a job because it pays more." But understand that at some point in life, you will get that money based on the talent that you've got. And I had a dream previously when I came into this. When I started to get passionate about development, I always thought I wanted to work for Google. And that's understandable. But the reason I wanted to work for Google was not because Google creates great products. It was because Google has things like slides. It's crazy, but I wanted to work for Google because they seem to have a really good office. And that's completely stupid. I realise that now. But it's about... But if we want to have a good example, like, why did I go to Sky for? Now, Sky gets some shit. It definitely does. And I think they know that. But I know some of it is actually right, but a lot of it's wrong. I know that I read a Reddit post previously from a recruiter who was complaining that all of the engineers was getting taken around Leeds by Sky, and it was based on they were paying more money. And I tell you, it's definitely nothing to do with the fact that they're paying more money. People don't want to work for Sky because they pay the most money. People want to work for Sky because you have the best developers in a certain in a area, and you want to work with the best people. As I say, you can't learn grit and passion. You can embrace it. If you work with gritty people or passionate people, that starts to rub off on you, and you want to work with people who you aspire to be. For example, as I say, I wouldn't say I'm a great engineer. I wanted to be a great engineer. But when I applied for Sky and I got taken through to the pair programming test, I was taken with two. Yeah, I think it was probably the two best engineers I've worked with in my career, no doubt. The problem is, after 2.5 hours, I wrote 6 lines of code. So 6 lines of code in 2.5 hours is pretty useless for anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. Even people who don't know programming probably could have wrote more than 6 lines of code in the 2.5 hours that I had. But the problem is, I thought I was done for. I thought, right, let's look at other roles. I'm done for. But I got told when I actually got the job, out of my surprise, that the reason is they knew they wanted to hire me based on the fact that I was talking for that 2.5 hours to them directly about what I want to do. It's not about showing somebody that you can do something. It's about people realizing that you can do it. You can show your passion and your understanding of things by just being very, very dedicated. And I actually just showed that I was good enough, which is a bit weird, but it's possible. People don't just evaluate you based on your CV or your portfolio. You can show your qualities via an interview. And things like Sky focus on having people who they can mold, or they have great mentors, and that's the people you aspire to be. Oh shit! How do I get back?
It's just one of the buttons on the
No.
You are there.
Yeah, just
stick to back and forth.
So that ruined me joke. Yeah, I'm still going to use it anyway because it hasn't really been a funny type of thing. So I want to go back to my story. As I said, I left off at the point where I had finished my apprenticeship. I actually got let go from my apprenticeship because the company I worked for didn't have any money. And I was basically just, one day I was sitting at home. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Didn't really want to do programming. Even though I'd spent 2 years pretending to be an apprentice web developer, I didn't really want to do that. I didn't know anything about it. I lacked any interest. But weirdly, I worked with a positive psychologist who had an idea to create a social media app called Happiest in Newcastle. It was a big thing at the time. Is that 25 minutes? Yeah, so at the time, I got a call from a positive psychologist who stated that we could do with your help, basically. We've got a lot of work to do, but I can't pay you. And you have to come to Newcastle. I lived in Sunderland. I had no money. I thought, well, what else am I doing? I'm just sitting around. Let's give it a go. I'm running about this so quickly. This would go on for a while. But basically, what happened was I worked with probably the best engineers, designers, and team you could ever put together. It was like the Avengers in the Northeast, basically. So that actually made me passionate about the role. I learned things at that point. I learned to be passionate about programming, but I didn't just learn about being passionate about programming. That's not the thing here. To be a great engineer, you need to be passionate about the product, the company you work for, the team you work with. And I ended up where I am today, basically. Yeah, so I'm going to just skip over this quickly. But yeah, I didn't know if this was a term down here, basically, so I thought, I was actually talking to my fiancée about it, and we didn't know, so I just thought I'd put it in, check with yous, and then see that it's not some sort of sexual innuendo. But yeah, let's move on. So basically, just to wrap up, I just want to say that I'm not a great engineer. There's not talent here. If you think you need to be talented to be a great engineer, you don't. Programming can be taught. The core skills that you require to be a great engineer can be taught. I'm not talented. It's just hard work, dedication, determination, and grace. That is all it is. And I've actually got to this point, and hopefully I will be a great engineer at some point, but I'm going in the right direction, I feel. But as I say, these are my opinions. These are not set in stone. These are what I feel it needs to be. You need to be a great engineer, but as I said, the opinionated. Yeah, thank you.